is sufficient for the conditional use permit application? Is that?
At this time, I couldn't
yes?
answer that question because we don't have a final permit submittal. They won't design the house and spend the $10,000, $15,000 to design it, but the permit will not be issued, nor will it get through zoning without the proper parking spots based on the parking requirements out of the Land Development Code.
Okay, so in other conditional use applications that have come before us, is that also the same procedure, that the use is allowed and then the permit is based upon satisfying those parking requirements?
Yes, ma'am, and part of almost every conditional use we do for single-family residents in the commercial sector, we put that catch-all phrase, must comply with the Land Development Code as a medium-density residential.
Okay.
So that takes away the commercial loopholes of a 70% ISR, no questions asked.
Okay, great. Thank you for the
You're
clarification.
welcome.
Were there any other recommendations for conditions to be placed on the conditional use permit by the Planning and Zoning Board?
No, just that the variance, like I mentioned earlier, be not applicable to the first-level garage.
And the conditional use permit, is that usually run with the land or building?
It runs with the land. It has to run with the land or else, we build the building on there, it's hopefully there for at least 50 or 60 years.
Because right now we're talking about a piece of land, not really a building that's there, so.
Right, it'll transfer with the land. It will be irrelevant of the ownership. It could sell in 10 years, and that conditional use is still in effect because the structure is still built.
It's interesting. Okay.
Right, that's the only way to do it where the building stays in conformity.
And I know this is not something we're considering this evening, but is there a conditional use permit on the building that's already there on the corner? The one that's currently a transient rental that's going to?
No, that building, if I don't have the data in front of me, I want to say it was built like in the 60s or 70s. It was, and like I said, it underwent a massive facelift, and I'm not, I wasn't here, so I'm not sure the extent of it.
There's no conditional use permit.
No, I think it predates, it definitely predates the Land Development Code, the current one. Actually, I might be able to find it. Let's see.
Any further questions?
1975. It's older than me.
If the variances aren't approved, then the conditional use permit, because it's got the clause in it that it has to meet regulations for medium-density residential, the conditional use permit would...
If the variances, like I said in the beginning, this was a three-prong approach. I can't speak for the applicants, but I would believe if any one of the variances were denied, it would possibly eliminate this meeting on this. Mainly because the commercial transition couldn't have happened without the appropriate parking. So their only option would be a variance for a reduction in parking. So by doing it this way, they've got the variance to back out onto the street, and then they have the variance for the front, and that's to help with the design of the building. And keep in mind, you see this little bit right here? Parcel 2 reserves that in the legal description. So I can move it over a little bit.
That may even be a third parcel, I can't remember.
Well, one of the variances by the pool, that's to allow the parking, right?
Okay, there was a reduction. So in our code, we have 5 foot from the pool's water edge and the deck to the lot line. Well, in this case, they asked for a reduction, I believe, to 3.5 feet or something of that magnitude. But the Planning and Zoning Board did discuss it. I did request that bollards be installed, so they'll be encased in concrete, set in way down in the dirt. But it's not up against another property, so that's part of the condition.
Right, okay. The building's already there.
This building is currently here. This is the conditional use to construct a single-family residence in a commercial sector.
Right. Okay. If there's no further questions, would anyone like to make a motion?
Has there been public comments?
There's
Public comments, yeah.
there's no cards for public comment. I thought it was on number 2. Oh, because this is number 2, because we switched to number 1. Yes, Mr. Ed Slavin.
The counter clock is not on.
Oh, dear. Well,
Someone have a cell phone that
I do.
will work?
I do.
Watch it do it.
If you just give me a moment to figure it out.
Or we could waive the time limit.
Right.
Technology.
Vice Mayor, while you're doing that, I'm going to let Mr. Slavin go ahead and I'll kind of watch.
I got it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Good evening. Ed Slavin, box 3084, cleanupcityofstblogspot.com. And I can't see that, so if you could just tell me when it's 30 seconds to go. Y'all had some really excellent policy discussions about conditional use permits where people wanted to put residences in commercial property in the past. And I would just call your attention to what you said during those discussions in the past, because they were very intelligent discussions and very good policy issues were raised. And I'd just like to point out that back in January, I had occasion to be in a community in South Florida where a small, beautiful beach community has been turned into nothing but high-rises. And in doing that, abortion, Pompano Beach, there's no commercial. People come to a town, they don't have a car, and there's no place to go within walking distance to even go to a restaurant. Now, you need to have, I think, as a public policy, and you already do, saying, we're going to preserve and protect commercial zoning, and people need commercial places to shop, to do business, to have offices. And I have not heard one principled legal or analytical policy reason. I've heard no sworn testimony, no real reason why you would want to approve this. So I'd like to reserve the balance of my time and ask you to ask the applicants, this architect who seems to have a lot of favor with the city and this law firm, why in the heck we should do this? Because I haven't heard one single good reason. And Mr. Law said that it wasn't suitable for commercial. Well, it's just not true. And there's no sworn testimony in the record, so I'd suggest you deny it. Thank you.
Anyone else want to, any other cards to speak on this?
I have no other cards on this item.
All right. Is the applicant here that?
Good evening, Scott Petro, 770 A1A Beach Boulevard, and hopefully 1713th Street. Actually, I'm glad Mr. Slavin brought that up. So one of the things we're trying to do is, actually, I'll put this back up for you, just so you can see it while we talk about it. Great. So right there now, again, on this existing structure that's in the front, which is actually on the boulevard, is presently a transient residential property. And so what we're actually trying to do is take that off of the residential, if you will, convert it into our office, adding a net of a new commercial building on the boulevard, and kind of the result from that, just based on the existing structure, the number of parking requirements that would be required if there were to try and be some sort of commercial building behind it, with the fact there's a pool there's already that building in the front that's taking up a lot of space, it's just not feasible. And so we're trying to figure out a way to bring commercial back into the commercial zoning and then still not end up with a waste of vacant land behind us. And so this was the best thing that we were able to come up with. We think it's a pretty good idea. We were excited about it, and we hope that, we actually, me and my partner who own the law practice. We both live here in the beach. Our business has been in the beach for the last 5 years. And another building that is still down the beach in commercial zoning, staying commercial. And so we're excited and hoping that this will continue to improve and kind of fall in line with what the commission has said, with the idea of bringing, again, more commercial properties and buildings back into commercial zoning. So that's kind of our position.
Do you own both lots?
Presently, we do right now, yes.
Okay, so the building that has gotten the facelift and is facing the boulevard, it's a mixed use or?
Nope, it's just, it's a residential, single-family house right now, basically.
It's residential, single-family house, okay?
And it's our desire to go in, do the requirements within the building to bring it up to commercial code so that we can then bring our office into it and renovate.
And is that where you're going to put your law office?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then to build a residence behind you? So, and it will be a single-family residence, have you considered a mixed use?
We've talked about it, we've gone back and forth, and the thing that seemed to make the most sense, again, we're fighting parking, seemed to be the single family. And again, the existing structure, it spans pretty wide, just about lane to street, so there's gonna be no visibility of any building that's back there. So from a practical standpoint, it seems to fall more in line along the boulevard with kind of what's going on behind the commercial buildings.
So parking, is that one of the issues that more parking would be required if you did a mixed use versus a single family?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Again,
Mr. Paul, can you confirm that, please?
Yes, let's say hypothetically we put a business on the first floor of the proposed 2 or 3 story structure, whatever gets designed. That would require every 250 square foot would have to have a parking spot. But we're just not done there. We have to add the mandatory handicap parking spot. With that and the access aisle is going to take up 17 feet of parking. So once we get the first floor satisfied for the commercial application, now we have to go into the second and potentially third floor, which would be based on the bedroom count. You just wouldn't have that wouldn't have the parking. You couldn't build a building of enough magnitude to get your cost back out of it. So as a single family residence, whether it be 2 or 3 stories, 4 or 5 bedrooms, it follows Chapter 6 in the parking code, and it has that many spots, but they're entitled to use the driveway, the garage, and all that to satisfy that requirement. And keep in mind, the access to that proposed development would be off 13th Lane.
Right. Okay, all right.
I really like this idea. I see it as a reallocation of the current transient rental to just a different space on the property, but is it your intention to divide the properties?
Yes.
Okay. And then bringing back into our commercial district a true commercial building. So I really like this idea, and we had agreed to look at each individual change in the commercial land use on a case-by-case basis, but I think that this particular instance is ideal. It's not adding a transient rental, it's just moving it reallocating it from one space to another space on the next parcel, and giving back commercial frontage to Beach Boulevard.
I agree. I see it also as a reallocation. I know we've expressed, like a policy preference away from approving residential structures on commercial lots. But so I don't think we're deviating from that spoken standard in this case simply because it is already there. So we are acquiring commercial. Given that, I can't formulate a policy reason to be opposed to the proposal. Of course, in an ideal world, the commercial structure would embrace both lots, but, we can't get too controlling of that minutia, and at least it does still further the primary purpose of that policy. So, thank you.
And I agree with Vice Mayor Commissioner George that I like commercial to sit on the boulevard, and what they're doing is they're removing a transient off of the boulevard and putting commercial back. So I applaud you for doing that, and I would be in support of the way that this sits right now.
Agree. I have nothing really to add to that. You guys said it very well.
All right, motion, please.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use application for 17 13th Street, lots 53, 54. Well, I guess it is only actually lot 54, excuse me.
It was,
that correct?
it was divided, and it's kind of half of, it's like 1.5 lots.
Okay, I'll just make a motion to approve the conditional use application that's before us.
I'll second that.
With the conditions that were set forth with planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Yes, with
All
those.
right. Roll call vote, Beverly?
Commissioner Dorr,
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell,
Yes.
Mayor England,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Costa,
Yes.
Commissioner Zamora.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to take item number 1 under public hearings, conditional use permit at 16 5th Street.
Yes, ma'am. December of 2019, this commission approved a conditional use permit for the construction of a single-family residence in a commercial sector with conditional use 2019-05. It was granted 1 year that the use shall be commenced, and that was for Mr. Cochran. If you remember, it was rejected initially, it came back, the minimum waiting time was waived, came back, and it was approved subsequently. Well, since then, the property is sold. Well, they never got within the 1 year to even submit for a permit or anything. So when it came to my staff had no choice but to deny any kind of request, because we're just not going to get there in time. I don't have a mechanism to extend a conditional use. So the only mechanism available was to reapply for a conditional use for the construction of a single-family residence. So the Planning and Zoning Board did recommend approval with essentially the same terms that you approved December of 2019. And here is a copy of the first page. It is in your packet under page numbers 18 and 19. Questions?
Is all the documentation from the previous conditional use permit, is it being transferred to this request for a new conditional use permit?
Yes, ma'am, and I have the 7 terms up, and you see them. There is one that the Planning and Zoning did recommend in 2019, and it did become part of conditional use. That is a verification by a state registered surveyor to verify building height once the roof trusses and the sheeting are on. That's not super uncommon. I've requested that before over my years.
And what about the building sketches that are in our package? Is that part of this conditional use permit?
This was the original submittal, but keep in mind, we're approving a single-family residence. This isn't a design review committee. This is, and I can't speak for the application, but Mr. Whitehouse may. I don't believe the intent of this is to make them build exactly this building, but they
Right.
do need to follow the guidelines of the conditional use and create a building that's going to comply with the medium density sector.
Okay.
I believe.
Any further questions from commissioners for Mr. Law? Then we'll bring up Mr. Whitehouse if he... No further questions?
Two, actually.
Okay.
I didn't see this in the backup material, and boy, this was a painstaking one the first time. It was denied because we wanted to keep the commercial preserved, and then I believe on the second go-around, the second application, Brian, you had indicated there was a commercial mixed-use building that had been approved for the boulevard-facing lots that did not make use of the eastward lots. And I believe I know that weighed into my decision to approve the conditional use for residents. I have noticed no activity on a commercial mixed use on the boulevard-facing lots. So Is there anything pending on
At
that?
this time, there's been no submittals to my department regarding the 2 mixed uses that were approved. There has been whispers from Gulfstream Design Group on one of them, on the southern one. The northern one was supposed to be a bike shop with a transient rental above. Nothing has been submitted officially, and I'm sure the mixed-use districts, I don't have them in front of me, but I want to say we may have given them 2-year window, but even still, we're getting close. But it still pertains that the lot is too small for a potential commercial development. We are surrounded by other houses there now that have been developed to the sides. So it's going to be whatever the commission decides on what they want to do with the future of it.
How many lots are there undeveloped right now there? Commercial lots?
Let's see if the internet works. There it is. All right. This appears to be the 16 Fifth Street. See if we have a site plan, so it's a little easier. So anyways, the commercial sector in the city goes 150 feet from the center line of the boulevard east, and it also goes 300 feet west. These were the 2 properties that were slotted for mixed-use development, with businesses on the first floor and transient rentals potentially on the second floor. So this is aerial imagery, I believe, from December something in 2019, maybe earlier than that. So, I mean, these properties are commercial.
Mr. Law, that particular several parcels is extremely sensitive to flooding when there's a lot of water events, rain and so forth. I believe that some of the other homes built built their foundation up. Will that be a requirement for any residential structures built in that area? Because, we're dealing with
Definitely.
significant flooding throughout our city. And
Part of my review process is I look at the elevations of the garage floor, I look at the crown of the road. In this case, it would be the southern road. An old school trick is make sure it's at least 6 inches above the crown of the road. So if that's your garage, your traditional step is 3.5 to 4 inches to get to the house. December of 2018, when the flood maps changed, it took away the minimum habitable floor requirements here. It shifted to an X or an X shaded, which is outside of the special flood hazard areas. So now we use basic logic. This area will all be filled. It will most likely be a type A drainage, which will drain to the front.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And do you know when those conditional use permits for the mixed use on the lots fronting the boulevard will expire?
I don't have that in front of me, but I do know it's been a while. Like I said, we've had very little contact with the southern, with this owner. The northern owner, we've had 0 contact with. And I have heard whispers that there was going to be a change of the building. Just thought of something. All right, this just came in about a month ago. They don't want to build what was approved. They want to change the look of it. Well, my department doesn't have the authority to do that. That was approved by the Planning and Zoning Board, so it has to match that look. So that's what happened with the southern one. That was a unique design by, I believe, Les Thomas. It was very interesting. The Planning and Zoning Board really appreciated the aesthetic value of it. They didn't want to build it, so we've talked to multiple contractors about this. So I'm not sure if they've selected an individual yet. but they were instructed that they have to build what was approved, or they have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Board. And if I do recall, that is their intent. So, northern one, I have no updates on that one. But the southern one sounds like it's being redesigned, but we still don't have a submittal.
And normally, this commission has asked for and requested a sketch for a conditional use permit, especially facing the boulevard.
Correct, but these two were originally mixed uses, and that power resides in the Planning and Zoning Board to approve.
Okay.
But in this case, yes, the Planning and Zoning Board did receive sketches and designs of the building, and that is part of the whole idea of the mixed use. So when they do, if they resubmit, they will have to provide at least a western elevation and a basic concept of what the building's going to be. But once again, at this time, we've received no official submittals.
So there's, that parcel, that commercial parcel is 4 lots, right?
No, these are all individual lots. This might help.
Well, I mean, the 2 facing the boulevard,
Those are 2 individual lots. Mhm.
right, 2, and then 2 lots behind those, is that 4 lots that are in that commercial, that are not developed yet, that are in the commercial district?
And I'll put a marker up there. Once I do this, I won't be able to adjust the map again. Obviously, I probably didn't get the street. I won't get. But it's 150 foot from the center of the boulevard over, and if we go back to the plats from 1964, it's clearly in the line. In the event any part of it's in the line, it's all in the line. And this is what we talked about in 2019, was, the intent of breaking it apart. But the problem is, at the time, and I don't remember the company that owned them all, they owned the individual lot. They owned the entire entity. Since then, I believe it's been broken up. And maybe I can try. I don't know if it's going to allow me to do it. That one. Let me refresh and we'll see all the current owners. All right, starting with this one, I don't think you can read it, but Heidi Hanstein, the owner, the one to the east, Jason Heller, and somebody different. This one's Vincent James. Mi'kmaq Properties, this is the mixed use, that's under redesign. Michael Collier. And this a different person. So when we first started, they were all owned by one entity. Now they appear to be owned by 6 entities, which makes it very troublesome to get everybody in line to build a commercial facility with the required parking.
And Planning and Zoning approved this, or recommended approval of the conditional use without a sketch?
We have the ones that were submitted in 2019.
Okay.
But we did talk about this in a little detail.
Okay.
And it was agreed that they're approving a single-family building in a commercial sector that has to comply with the medium zoning district with the conditions of a surveyor, evaluate building height.
Okay.
So, but this is from Entire Inc. They were the agents at the time. This was acquired through a records request.
All right. If no other questions for Mr. Law, thank you. Does Mr. Whitehouse, did you want to say something on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Law. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, for the record, James Whitehouse, St. John's Law Group, 104 Seagrove Main Street here in St. Augustine Beach, Florida. I am here on behalf of the property owners, Mr. Collier and Ms. Young, and as you heard from Mr. Law, they purchased this property closed on it February 28th, right before our world changed significantly. Their intent was to move forward with the approval, and they ran into a lot of, issues trying to get it done. So as they got, into the summer, they realized that they weren't going to be able to get it done by December 2nd, and so they approached the city, and then the city told them that they didn't have any recourse but to have to come back for a new conditional use permit. And so they came and spoke with me, and I informed them of what they needed to do, and so that's why we're back before you. We went to the Planning and Zoning Board, and they recommended to you guys to approve this conditional use permit, one that was unanimously approved by this same commission back in December. I think it was the 2nd of last year. They want to do basically the same thing, which is this commercial residence. They reside in Washington State now, but would like to build this residence here. And they are really fond of St. Augustine Beach, just like many people we know. And so, but they just want to be able to have the time to build, to get with the right people, to make sure the design is accurate. They're willing to move forward with the same design. I mean, they'd like to have a little leeway in case they need to change anything when they look at the design, but their intent is to build something very similar to what was approved. And so I think, as you saw from the maps, a number of these properties have been developed and been approved for conditional use permits. And in fact, the one right behind it, I think, is now built with the residents. And then I can actually tell you that I also represent Ms. Hanstein, who owns the property on the north corner, and she's trying to move forward with the mixed-use development. There's some changes that she needs to come back and talk to you guys about, so that'll be back before you, but we're in the process of moving forward with that. And by the way, we were working on that in haste prior to the COVID as well, and so that'll be back before you for the mixed-use development which was approved previously. And I have had some conversations and heard in the same rumblings as Mr. Law on the south corner there to have that mixed-use development. So I think this area is going to develop to how you guys would like it to develop with the commercial on the boulevard. And so, in other words, we're back before you to ask to just basically you have to grant a new one, but to grant this conditional use permit. And the only thing I would ask, and I've talked to Max about this and the staff, and I don't think they have any objection at all, you can ask them yourselves, but to ask for a little bit of extra time, because usually we grant these for 12 months, but there's no requirement that it be 12 months, and so we would ask that it be maybe 18 to 24 months, maybe 18 months with something with the staff, if the code, depending on what our world puts in front of us in the next year or so, maybe a staff possible extension to 24 if it's needed, so they don't have to make a whole new application for conditional use permit. I think that's probably a reasonable request, and you can put conditions on these or however you want, and you can speak to your counsel about that, but I think we would ask for that just in an abundance of caution, because as you know, the COVID hasn't disappeared, and so we'd like to just have that time for them so they don't have to make a whole new application for the same thing and me be back in front of you. Not that I don't like coming in front of you, but I think that's what it is. So those are all the things. I can answer any questions you have, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Public comment?
I have no cards on this item.
Any further questions, comments by commissioners? If not, anyone want to make a motion?
Mayor, I think under the circumstances, given that we'd already, made a decision with particulars on this property and with the impact of COVID, I'd be comfortable to proceed. I'm hesitant to change the timeline, though, and to grant something further than the 12 months. I'd be worried about setting a precedent there. So I don't know if that's something worth discussing before a motion is made. I'm not sure how the rest of the commission feels. I appreciate that, being asked that, and certainly prefer efficiency for us and the applicants as well, so they don't have to repeat something, but there's a reason that a one-year standard is in the code to begin with. And I think that even with the extensions that, COVID has caused, I think that if they truly want to proceed, they could probably do so within the original existing time frame plus this extra year that we're kind of, granting vis-a-vis a second conditional use permit.
Mr. Law, the 1 year is it's not certificate of occupancy has to be, it's just to start construction, right?
Ma'am, I would consider a legal, complete application as beginning construction.
Okay.
There's many facets to a plan review on a house. There's multiple documents. I would consider, as long as they have a complete submittal with structural engineering, energy sheets, product approval, truss engineering, and approved site plan, I would consider that the commencing of the project. At that point, it would fall under the weight of the Florida Building Code with
Okay.
its timelines for review of the documents, approval of the documents, and abandonment of the documents.
Okay, all right.
Right, so they don't even have to break ground yet, they just have to get everything in, is what it sounds like.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve conditional use file number CU 2020-03 with the recommendations from the planning board, including the verification by state certified surveyor as to verifying height for the 1 year period.
I'll second that. Roll call vote, Beverly.
I have a question about the time period, so that's the only reason I can address the commission, because I forgot to add one thing about their whereabouts. I think it's important for the time period.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but there is a motion and that's been seconded, so do we need to vote on it, or can we still discuss on it? I forget the procedure on this.
Discuss.
Okay,
Okay.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Thank you.
So I forgot to mention that I did say that they're residents of the state of Washington, however they travel, and they are in Canada now, and they can't travel back into the United States right now. They want to come here to go over the things. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I'm really not. I mean, there is some extenuating circumstances in their particular situation, and that's why I'm asking for it, I think. And by the way, I don't think that the 12-month period's in the code. It's something that we've done before. As I said, with these conditional use permits, you can put conditions on the permit itself. And, you can speak to this, Commissioner George, to the chair, but I think that, as long as you state sort of reasons why you're putting that in there, it doesn't create a precedent for future times. And so that's why, that was one of the main things they emphasized to me, and that's why I brought it up today. I would plead with the commission to maybe consider that, even if it wasn't 24 months, maybe if it was 18 months, just for that little bit of time, because like I said, they want to come here to be able to get the right thing done. They really do want to build their residence and be here, but since they are out of the country, I don't have proof of that. I can just tell you that they've told me this, and so I go by that. But as I said, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me come back up, but that's why I wanted to let the commission know that. Thank you.
And I'm sympathetic to that, but again, working from what our community plan is, what our policies are, what the application before us, what's on the record, what the circumstances of this lot is, I don't know that any of that really speaks to those, the statements of counsel as to what's, and I'm sympathetic to that. Again, I wouldn't deviate from standard.
Mr. Law, it's
I think
getting extensions.
I have your answer already, and I'm going to read a little section of the code, if I may. Conditional use permits shall be non-transferable and granted to the applicant only, and the use shall be commenced within a period of 1 year from the effective date of the final order granting same, provided, however, that the city commission may adopt the following conditions in a permit. I'm going to summarize number one, that the conditional use permit will be transferable. That addresses Mr. Samore's request and runs with the land at the previous one. Number two, the time within which the use shall be commenced may be extended for a period of time longer than 1 year. So in summary, the code does give a 1 year window, but the commission has the authority to extend it based on circumstances.
So we could extend it if extenuating circumstances, instead of another new application, that the applicant could come in and ask for an extension at that time with the reasons for the extension.
No, ma'am, there is no mechanism to have an extension of a conditional use permit. You would have to declare it now. Instead of the traditional 12-month period, you would have to grant an 18-month or whatever the board saw fit at this time, and that would be the expiration date of the current or the new conditional use permit. So right now, if you do nothing and you just stick with what the code, it gives you 12 months. You do have the latitude as a commission to extend that, but you would have to extend it now.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have a problem extending it for an additional 6 months or something, as long as we clearly stated in the motion that the reason we are doing so is because of the unprecedented circumstances surrounding COVID, so that it's established that we're not setting like a new precedent.
Right.
My
And
problem
following
with
that, Matt.
extending it is, I just don't want to see, I don't want to see these parcels where we're issuing these transferable conditional use permits, all of a sudden have a market value to them.
Right.
And so, hey, we've got 24 months, now we can turn around and sell it, and it's transferable. So if you want to extend it, I would take the transferability away. That would be my addition to that, but I'm fine with your motion.
Now, question, I'm okay extending it maybe as a staff review, so they have up to the 12 months. And then if they deem necessary, so they don't have to come back into the board and do it, they can talk to Mr. Law and show a reason on why they have to extend it the additional 6 months.
Mr. Rumwell, I think Mr. Law is saying we don't have that capability of doing an extension later. Now, whether we should or not, that may be something that we can talk about, but we would have to either give the applicant a further time period of, say, 18 months, or we stick with the 12 months and see what can be done later on just discussions on whether, depending on circumstances, a conditional use permit, like other permits, a building permit extensions could be possible.
And I'm okay with 18 months based on the current situation that we're sitting in now.
Okay.
You know, if they're out of the country or whatever the case may be, I think a little bit of leeway, just like we have later on, we have a little leeway with outdoor dining with restaurants. So I think if we're willing to budge a little bit during unprecedented times, I'd like it. And I don't mind, Mr. Samore, if that's legal, as a conditional use to take away the transferability from that. I don't know if that's possible or not.
Is that permissible, or is that a, because
My recommendation, and I do share Commissioner Samora's concerns, because if I was a businessman,
Right.
I would be doing it all day long. My recommendation is that we can't take away the transferability of it once the building has been permitted or built. I would potentially say that, and the city attorney's gonna have to make it legal, but maybe we grant the conditional use to the applicant for up to 18 months to provide a complete submittal to the building department, and we put a condition until a building department has approved a permit application, which would mean all fees are paid. It's now under the state domain of Chapter 1 of the Building Code. Maybe you could do something like that, but that's outside of my wheelhouse. That's definitely a city attorney question. And it is a conditional use permit, and so the first word says
so
conditions.
he's basically saying it's not, wouldn't be transferable until
The
they
building
get
permit was
approval
issued.
and the permit's issued.
So it would stop somebody from getting the conditional use, a blanket thing. You have a single family in a commercial sector, it's worth $20,000 more probably, whatever transient rentals are. That should be, or is a concern of the commission, then maybe that's one way to address it, but I don't know what's legal or not in this case.
Mayor, maybe we should just take a vote on the motion that's on the floor and see where that gets us.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that then.
Commissioner George?
I'm sorry, are we voting on the original motion or the one that extends it for 6 months?
The one that creates a 12 months approval of, essentially copying what we had already given them 12 months on. And that includes the transferability, it includes the recommendations from the PZ, it includes the verification of the state certified surveyor to verify height. Any other questions on the motion? Okay, so I'll vote yes.
Okay. Commissioner Romo?
So my answer to get this moving is yes, but I want it to be clear that I'm in favor of a 6-month extension or some sort of mechanism that if they come back and we change our law in between these 12 months, that I'd like to revisit this.
Commissioner, are you, you said you're voting yes, so
Yes.
if you wanted, and just, procedural strategy here, if you wanted to
So then-
stand on that, then you would actually be voting
yes,
no, so just.
Based on
what-
that's right, sorry, yes.
See if it
Yeah,
fails,
got it,
so, yeah.
So was that a
A
no?
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Costa?
No.
And Commissioner Samora.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
For those who voted no and are in favor of an extension, we can discuss that with the building director on what kind of mechanism we might be able to put in place for extensions rather than new.
I have a serious concern with giving the power to to extend a conditional use permit that was granted by a panel of 5 people to 1.
I
That
Well,
should-
no, it may be.
That should never, in my opinion, should never happen.
Yeah, but it may be that we can talk about extensions coming back to the commission so that the applicant does not, with the right reasons, the applicant doesn't have to do a full-blown new application and fee.
And that's that's a great idea, whenever the will of the commission is, but keep in mind, you will be losing money by doing that.
Yeah.
There's the legal advertising, the recording costs, so that's, whatever the commission wants to do, we can get to the finish line.
All right.
But
I
the
feel
reason.
like I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do want to say, I feel like the applicant does enjoy that kind of expedited processing, only in that the public vetting has already taken place on the lots. If they're, like this one today, if they're coming forward asking for, a renewal, I mean, it is inherently an expedited process, unless circumstances have changed in the surrounding lots or other, things in the city. So, I understand the fee is still there. How much is the fee? Is it $200, $300?
I believe it's 400, but I'll have that
$400.
answer for you in a minute. We have a receipt in here.
I mean, in the context of constructing one of these properties, it's pennies. It obviously takes us time as well, and it's the city's expenses, but.
It appears to be $400 application fee with a $10 legal notice. That's the orange sign in the stand.
I think we might, hopefully, some of us discuss with the building director.
One simple solution is just change the standard 12-month to 18-month. Then we don't have to take exceptions in.
If that's
I
the
don't think
policy.
I don't think commissioners in bank are willing to do that.
I was just going for the easiest thing.
Okay, all right. But your applicants do have their conditional use permit, and there's time for them to work things out. Hopefully, things will get better, and they can get everything put back together. Okay? All right. Let's see. Now we're up to the consent items.
Yes, on a consent agenda, you can pass all items with one motion and vote, or if you want to take a particular item off the consent and talk about it individually, you can do that also.
Commissioners, does someone want to promote consent as items number 3, 4, and 5 together? Or do you have questions? Is there an item that you would like to take separately?
I feel like we should discuss the salary question.
Okay. All right, so we'll quickly take items 3, 4, and 5 separately.
That's under old business.
No, 5's under consent.
4 and 5, maybe done
We could
together.
take 4 and 5 together.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, so Max, item number 3 first.
Okay, well, the resolution is in front of you, and I think the commissioner wanted to discuss it in particular, so he can tell you what she wants to do concerning it.
Thank you, Chief. Look at that. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Max. And thank you, Chief, for stepping up. Again, happy to have you. And, I always support the recommendations, generally speaking of our former Chief Hardwick. But, we were dealing with a situation here with the credentialing. I guess it makes me a little nervous starting out. It's no reflection on our new chief. I spoke to him about this before he, put his name in, that, there's that credential that's still being fulfilled, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it will be fulfilled very soon. It makes me nervous on just policy standards and, adherence to our, advertised qualifications for the position, to jump in to a salary that's $8,500 into the minimum when one of the credentials hasn't yet been captured. And I know that, and it's not any fault of his, certainly, it's again, the COVID circumstances, not all that, but I just think it's worth discussing, given that we're in such a tight budget constraint this year.
So would you be more comfortable with like a step-in approach, that once the
Yeah.
certification is completed, that then the salary would move to the recommended?
Right, and I don't think it would be fair to go outside of the range, certainly, because there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of, value there that we receive from your, expertise in this area and services. So, but I just wanted to see how the rest of the commission feels about that.
When will this requirement that you're talking about be fulfilled?
So due to COVID, right now, the FBINA Academy is not having any classes. I was supposed to attend this past March, but due to COVID, that didn't happen, and I'm still waiting on word for when they're going to start up their classes again. So as soon as they start, being a current interim police chief, I'll have priority to jump to the front of the line.
How long does that course take to complete usually?
4 months.
Isn't concerned about it and wants to proceed, I'll certainly support the majority, but I think it, I just didn't want to have it voted by consent without discussion of some regard.
I wouldn't want to be punitive in this situation. We've got a recommendation from the outgoing chief, and Chief Carswell, interim Chief Carswell, did say he was on the list in March. It's been postponed due to circumstances beyond his control, and it could be postponed indefinitely for reasons outside of his control. And I think he's doing everything he can, so I'd hate to be punitive because of something that none of us have any control over. I'd hate, because it could be another 2 years, God only knows. Let's hope not. But
It's a good point. Mm-hmm.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Samora on that. I mean, even if we went back and looked at, I think the beginning range is somewhere around 82.5, for $7,500. I mean, I get it policy-wise, and so we have policy in place. But again, I think with the circumstances we're under, I feel confident that Chief Carswell is going to do it, and he's going to do it well. And I'm okay keeping it at the recommendation from Chief Hardwick, or Sheriff Hardwick now.
Chief Carswell, it's an interim chief position, and we will be discussing further next year. And since, from a practical point of view, the functions of the job that he must fulfill, so I am supportive of the Chief Hardwick's recommendation.
Okay.
So I have to say this because it's bothering me a little bit, and I have no problem with everything that you said and agreeing to the salary. However, in our last item, when we were talking about other people whose situation was affected by COVID, which they had no control over, we were like, oh, no, we're not going to grant any extenuating circumstances. But now we are. So I'm just, I have to point out that it's really important for this board to show consistency in all of our decision-making. So I think that I just needed to say that. Thank you.
I do think there are differences.
I agree, but there's one underlying current, and that is the COVID situation, which has affected everything that everyone has done
Right.
in our lives every day.
Right, and building plans are being drafted remotely and emailed and PDF'd and all that. I hear what you're saying. Okay, so I'll also support the recommendation of Chief Hardwick.
Okay, I'll make a motion to,
Yeah, we have public comment that we need to.
okay.
Mr. Ed Slavin?
Thank you. Ed Slavin, Box 3084. First of all, we've not established that Acting Chief Carswell is not willing to serve in the position without this raise. He doesn't meet the credentialing requirement currently, so why don't you just table it instead of doing it tonight and ask him to ask the FBI National Academy to send a letter and verify what he said and give the commission more of a comfort level in doing something which I think if you were to grant this raise when he's not met the credentials, your HR handbook is out the window. And you've just carved an exception in it big enough for any employment lawyer anywhere to say, well, I need a raise and I don't meet the credentials and I should get one too. It's just not right. It's favoritism. And Chief Hardwick is the sheriff-elect. But may I inquire, please, of the commission through the mayor, what is the status of advertising this position? Because we must comply with Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We're a government agency. We have to comply with the civil rights laws, which were made possible by the courage of 1,000 people in St. Augustine and St. Augustine Beach who were arrested here in 1964 illegally, some beaten, some abused. And I think it would be wrong not to advertise this position. Are you planning to advertise this position? Will this commission direct tonight that an advertisement be posted? We got to find Chief of Police, Chief Hardwick, through advertising and posting. It is a sine qua non of employment law and human resources. And you must advertise this position. Do I understand correctly it's not been advertised yet? And if not, what in the heck are we waiting for? I'll wait for an answer.
Mr. Slavin, at the previous meetings, the commission addressed this, and we have a plan, and things will be done next year.
So there will be advertising?
I'm sure it will be.
Okay, that's a promise.
No, it's not a promise. I'm
Well-
not going to confine myself to that.
So we're going to let him slide into a position without proper advertising, the same way we did in this county with the new county administrator,
Mr. Slavin,
who is
the
the
commission...
only person considered. This is de facto sole source hiring. It is wrong. It's illegal. It violates Title VII, and EEOC will investigate.
Mr. Slavin, your time is up, and the
Okay, yours
commission
is
has
too, and I
addressed
think you
this.
should stop violating EEO laws. Thank you.
Mr. Tom Reynolds?
Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. I asked the commission to deny this. Carswell is not a good interim chief of police. He would not make a good one. I look for you to go outside. I think you should call this an emergency, run a full-page ad, get somebody in here that already has the qualifications. Already has the qualifications. Now I want to give you an example. I walked over to this table during the break. I asked the officer on the end, I don't know his name, if the Bridge Alliance was down yet, fixed. He did not even know it was broken. Carswell did not even know it's broken. It's been broken since 4:30. That connects to our city. They don't know that? We have an agreement. What if Officer downtown, these two are going to jump in their car and head down Anastasia Boulevard, and the bridge is broken? See, a professional chief would know that bridge is broken. You know, Rob Hardwick's own words. He's tainted. Local law enforcement is tainted. In order to best serve this residents of St. Augustine Beach, we need someone from the outside. Bring in fresh ideas. No, we don't need another David Shore puppet. That's what we're going to end up with. The same thing. I could go on and on several incidents at the police department that I'm involved in. I don't have any confidence in them. Everybody knows in this county who can read and watch a show that Michelle O'Connell was murdered. We know that the man that recommended Carswell, Rob Hardwick, was part of that cover-up. The largest theft of money ever stolen from veterans, the Allied Veteran Scandal, took place in St. Johns County. Who was the lead detective? Rob Hardwick. I want to tell you something. Rob Hardwick is not somebody I would take a recommendation from. And I hope that we go outside. Thank you.
I have no more speaker cards.
Okay, Commissioners, we need a motion for the recommendation to increase the salary of our interim chief, Carswell, to $90,000.
So moved.
I'll second. Roll call vote. Beverly?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
And Commissioner Samore?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. The next consent item are for budget resolutions, and if we can take this together for the surplus property.
I'll make a motion to approve both.
I actually have a question about number 5, the surplus vehicle. So a few years ago, we had a surplus vehicle from the police department that sat at Public Works for over 2 years before it was disposed of. Do we have a better system of keeping track of when these pieces of property are scheduled to be disposed of so that we don't lose value on whatever we have?
This vehicle on this list is a vehicle we got from the Department of Defense. It's a former military vehicle. So it's not like a used patrol vehicle or anything like that. It's something that we're actually spending more money on now.
Oh, I understand the reason behind wanting to dispose of it. My question is that several years ago, when a vehicle was taken out of service from the police department, it sat at our Public Works Department for 2 years, over 2 years, losing value. I don't even know if it ever was sold, but do we have a better system in place for tracking and disposing of these vehicles that are very costly, and the longer they sit, the more they're going to lose their value? That's my question.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not familiar with that vehicle, but I will definitely look into it and make sure that it's taken care of.
So I can answer that question.
Thank you.
Our capital asset policy allows us to present to the commission on an annual basis for the removal of assets so that we can sell them as surplus. I would prefer to do them as they come up. So that will be a policy change that I will be putting forth to the commission this year so that we don't have assets that are sitting there for extended periods of time. As it's written right now, I believe April is the time frame where it comes before the commission for actual disposal of the assets so that we can list them on the auction websites. But I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather get them out as quickly as possible and get the proceeds back in.
I think that's a very smart approach, and then we won't lose track of what we have. So thank you for answering the question and suggesting a change to the policy.
Okay, so we're back to considering, and do we have any public comment on these consent items?
Not on this item.
Okay, so budget resolution 20-08, 20-09, and 2023, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So move.
All right, since it's a consent item, can everyone in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, all right, moving on. Item number 6, under old business and ordinance. Mr. Law?
Yes, last month we talked about an amendment to the Land Development Code, adjusting recreational standards for facilities. This is a result of the comprehensive plan, which was adopted at the beginning of this year. This is the first reading of ordinance 20-14. There's been no changes since last month.
Commissioners, we looked at this last month. This is just the putting it in writing. Do we have any questions from you on this? Do we have any public comment?
Not on this item.
All right. Willing to make a, let's see, and this is ordinance, and so we need,
Our attorney to read it.
yes, yes.
All right. Ordinance 20-14, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, sections 4.01.06, recreation, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-14.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, constructing unbuilt section of 2nd Street, west of 2nd Avenue.
Yes, you've discussed this before. Originally, our suggestion had been that it be done by a regular special assessment. The finance director has a concern about people perhaps becoming delinquent in paying that special assessment, and has suggested a non-ad valorem assessment similar to what you recently approved for the solid waste disposal and collection costs. What we would need for you to do is approve a resolution prior to January 1, 2021, and we would, January 1st, 2021, and we would have that resolution on the agenda for your meeting in December, if you go that route. So, in summary, you've got two methods of getting the money to build this road. A regular special assessment, where we would bill each property owner the cost to build the road in front of their lots, or the non-ad valorem assessment, where the cost would go on their tax bill. And we would collect the money there, and we could have a time limit like 5 years for that cost to be on there. Some could pay it all up once. No, they couldn't pay it all at once because it would be over a 5-year period. Related to this topic is the matter of the North Florida Land Trust. And the two owners who are in the audience here who want to ensure that their lots do not get developed forever and ever. I met with representatives of the land trust. The director is taking the proposal to his board in November. I think it's tonight or today it was taken. I don't know the result of his board decision yet. I suggest that no matter what the decision is concerning the Florida Land Trust in making the lots conservation in perpetuity, that is not really related to the non-ad valorem assessment matter. Except in this way, that if the lot owners were successful in getting the trust to accept their properties, that we would then pay for the building of the road in front of their lots using road impact fee money, because they are giving their land for a dedicated public purpose, which is creating greens, open space, forever green, et cetera, and protected from development. Even if the land trust decides that they will not take these two lots, there's another avenue for those lot owners to use, which is to dedicate the land to the city. You then would change the land use of those lots to parkland. And the only way parkland can be sold or developed or leased or whatever is by a supermajority vote of the city commission and a referendum. And those two steps, I think, would be so insurmountable that those lots would remain undeveloped for the foreseeable future or forever. So my question or my action to you, requested action, is that you decide whether to use the non-ad valorem assessment means or the regular assessment means. If you approve the non-ad valorem assessment, then you will need to pass Resolution 20-21, which I'd forgotten is in your agenda material right here. If you choose not to go that route, then we would go through the special assessment, and we would bring the matter back to you later on with costs, et cetera. So what is your preference?
So, Mr. Royal, the main thing you are asking the commission to decide tonight is whether to special assessment versus non-ad valorem.
Exactly. We want to get off the dime and move forward on this because it's been going on since 1992. People want to build a road. We have an attorney here, Mr. Whitehouse, who represents some owners who are very keen on building the road. I will say this, concerning the non-ad valorem assessment, it is a much slower process than the special assessment, because we have to get the property appraiser involved and tax collector, and there's got to be an interlocal agreement and a public hearing, and it would have to go on the tax bill for FY '22, which is a year from now, when the tax bill would be sent out for that fiscal year. Well, the special assessment is quicker. We probably could get that done within 6 months.
And it's tax deductible, right?
Well, that I'm not a tax attorney and I don't know.
In a ad valorem real estate special assessment is
I'm
there's
not certain. I don't think,
tax exemptions,
I don't know.
correct? Or not exemptions. It can be deducted along with your normal real estate taxes. Okay,
I know what you're yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
You're answering that, right?
yeah, I understand now.
So, since it's quicker and since there's a benefit to the payers, that it's a tax deduction, tell me again why we want to do non-ad valorem assessment?
It guarantees we're going to get the money. If we go through the special assessment route, if those who don't want to pay us, and there may be a few, won't pay us, and we'll have to put a lien on the property, and there'll be an outstanding debt on that property
Well, we would
until it
have
is
to
sold.
do it both ways, right? We have to use a lien.
No, not for the non-ad valorem assessment. That will, if you approve it, it will go on their tax bill. If they don't pay their taxes, well, that's between them and the tax collector.
And usually third parties will buy those tax certificates so that the municipality gets the money, and then the property owner just owes that reimbursement for the tax certificate to the third-party investor.
But I thought if you don't pay your ad valorem real estate taxes, it may take a little longer, but you can put a lien on the property and sell it for a tax.
There's already,
Tax sale.
Correct. The tax bill constitutes a lien on the property. And then if it's not paid when past the delinquency period, then the St. Johns County Tax Collector's Office sells those certificates in a bid, and whoever is willing to collect the least amount of interest on that certificate literally gives the money to the county for that bill. The county then sends it to the municipality. It's up to that third party then with
It's the bid.
Correct, right, that third party now owns that lien, so to say.
Okay.
For that certificate. So it takes the burden of enforcement off of the municipality,
Okay.
which is a very compelling benefit.
And ad valorem taxes, it's sold at a bid, and the special assessment would be the full amount.
No, we would get the
Okay.
full amount either way.
Don't get the full amount either. You may
Disregard
not.
what I was giving you too much information
Okay.
about the interest rate there.
Okay.
Sorry, but, no, we still get the same amount of money either way, but we would get it more quickly and with greater assurance of not having to spend further money on enforcement by going the non-ad valorem assessment mechanism. Either way, the expense will increase the tax basis for the property owner. So I think that's maybe the tax benefit you were speaking to earlier, as to any capital gains, concerns down the road after they sell the property, improve the property, that all of those expenses will increase their basis.
Okay.
And Commissioners, if I can just say kind of where my thought process was with this. In billing out the last road that we did, I believe that was 8th Street, all of the parties were agreeable, and we did collect those funds before we started the construction. My concern is the cash outlay without a guaranteed time frame of getting that recovered back in. So we have had parties who've said that they don't want to develop, and if we just mail out an assessment bill and they refuse to pay, that's where I suggested the non-ad valorem as a mechanism to at least give us a guaranteed time, whether it be 3 years, 5 years, whatever you set, to recover that money. The city is going to be out that cash up front to go ahead and do the construction of that road, but we have a time frame that is defined as far as when we're going to receive that money back. So that was just one mechanism that I had suggested to make sure that we can, one, proceed with building the road, two, getting the funds back into the city's coffers as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and that's the big distinction between this proposal and 8th Street, is that 8th Street was 100% all in. We have the cash ready to pay up front by all of the property owners. And so I would be very nervous about a special assessment where we have to, perfect our lien independently and then foreclose on it as an enforcement mechanism.
I'm concerned about losing flexibility with the multi-year implementation of a special assessment. When I start thinking about a non-ad valorem that carries over 3 years, 5 years, and someone goes ahead and develops a piece of property and puts a house on it, now all of a sudden, there's no way for us to come back and say, well, you need to pay the special assessment prior to construction, which I believe we could do with just a pure special assessment versus a non-ad valorem. To me, it gets a little bit convoluted when and we will have people that develop those lots, and now all of a sudden there's a 5-year non-ad valorem that's hung out there for someone to pay. I mean, not that we're not going to get our money, but it just seems a little bit convoluted. I like the ability to put conditions on a special assessment that says the property can't be developed until that's paid in full, things like that. So I think we have enforceability either way, but that's just one of my concerns.
I'm also a little concerned about the statement that was made that we would be out money by building the road. Wouldn't we want to not begin until we had the majority of the money in hand? I mean, it seems kind of backwards to start a project without having the funds.
Well, Vice Mayor, that's what's happened to us in the past. We tried to use that approach, and it didn't work. We might have 5 property owners agreeing, saying, yes, I'll do it. But we still have 2 of the owners here tonight, and maybe some others that I don't know about, that say, no, we don't want to pay it up front, or I don't have the money right now, or whatever reason, and that we just are stymied. In effect, you'd be asking them to volunteer to pay up front, and it's not like 8th Street where 4 property owners were very eager to have that street open and were willing to pay it fully.
And I believe at our last meeting, at either the one before in October or September, we did fully decide and take a vote on moving forward. And then we were going to deliberate on how we collect it. So we did have a vote on that, on moving forward.
Well, I understand that part. I just, you don't go to the store and take things out of the store without paying for them first. So this is, it seems a little odd to me to start a project before we had actual funds in hand. So just my opinion.
It's a good question. I mean, I think that we are fully authorized legally to collect the assessment money first and then develop the road once it's been received and set those funds aside from the ad valorem or non-ad valorem as they come in into an earmarked account.
Interest-bearing.
Interest-bearing, right. And then also that way, then we wouldn't have to, maybe in theory, add on interest to the amounts we're collecting because we're paying it out front and having to collect it back. So, I mean, I don't think that there was ever specific discussion in the vote process on that mechanism, that process, that timeline. It's a new question that I didn't consider at the last meeting.
I thought we did discuss that we would use money from the
Impact fees.
impact fees, thank you,
Okay.
up front, and then decide how we would, I thought we did
No, that.
cover that.
That gives me some anxiety because I don't know if we can spend the road impact fee money and then use the special assessment money to pay back the impact fee
Back fees, right.
account. I think once you spend the road impact fee money, it's spent. Particularly if it's for, well, in this case, it'd be for a brand-new road, and the impact fee money is authorized to be spent for that. In effect, you're saying you're spending the road impact fee money, then you're collecting money from the owners, and then you're spending that money on another road.
So I have a question for legal. Can we, if we use impact fees money and then take the money back through an assessment or non-ad valorem, can we open up an account specifically that money goes towards, that is back towards roads? So that way it kind of replenishes that impact fee money, for lack of better terms?
I don't know that, have you seen that somewhere legally? Because I've looked at it. Yeah, I don't think there's an issue if this is an approvable item that you can spend impact fee money on.
Sure.
Right.
And then I don't know of any legal reason that you cannot refund back into the impact fee fund from a special assessment for this. So that'd be an appropriate use of the impact fees, and you can reimburse the impact fees. I've never seen anything, and I don't think James knows of anything either,
So we can
that
pay
says
it
you
back.
can't repay it.
So we can pay, so essentially we could have the money up front, and then the money from either the non-ad valorem or assessment can then go back to the impact fee coffers to then push that back up for another road.
You still have the same
down
problem
road.
if it goes for forever and nobody pays it back, then you
Well,
never
then you're
pay
out.
back your impact fees, but yeah.
Yeah, but the question is how?
Right.
I mean, it's not like, you're going to have a budget hearing, we're going to say, oh, wait, let's just take 200,000 out of our general budget and just move it into impact fee. Can you actually?
You can't do that.
Right. Well, it's unlikely that we'd have enough money surplus to do that.
Right.
So is there a way to earmark the funds as they come in on the assessment
Yes.
to be payable only to impact fees?
Correct.
And is that done through what process? Like, how is that earmarked? Would that be part of a?
It's through the ordinance and the way you set it up when you draft the original fee, one way or the other, whether it's either one can be directed right back into impact fees. And you'd need to do that because arguably if you put it into general funds, then you can't do that. But you would have some issues with that. But
We do have a separate bank account for impact fees. So the deposits would go directly back into that specific account where we could keep a record of it.
Okay.
The only question, Madam Mayor, that I have is, I want to kind of see what the cost is. So the people know what the cost is going to be, whether it be a special assessment or a non-ad valorem. I think we should give them the right to know what the cost of that road's going to be. And then we can decide, is it going to be a special assessment or a non-ad valorem? Because I'd hate to say, okay, we're going to vote on it tonight as a non-ad valorem or assessment, and then we come out and we're going to say, hey, you're being assessed $50,000.
Well, but the price will be the same whether it's non-adverb assessment or,
No, and I appreciate that. I just think that we should be transparent in telling the residents what that cost is going to be. So there's no surprises to them.
well, I think for the purpose of tonight's meeting, though, knowing these precise dollars and cents really doesn't matter. We need your direction as to where we want to go on this, because otherwise we may be here in 2022 with the same question.
But I would argue that what the assessment or the tax is going to be is a deciding factor on whether we're going to decide to do it as an assessment or a non-ad valorem item. I think that it is, I would agree, I think it is part of the picture, and I think that we had material on that once before, but I don't see it included. I think that Mr. Tredick did a detailed list of the costs that were involved in this project.
Yes, we did. We presented 3 different options with 3 different costs, the straight through, the north or the south alignment. None of those have really changed, although they probably need to be dusted off again since it's a few months down the road. That, depending upon whether the lots that are donated contribute or whether if they don't have to contribute to that, then obviously that cost, if we do the third scenario that we talked about, would have to be split among the remaining of the lots, the one-third, and then a third from the
Certainly.
city. So we don't have the numbers here tonight, but we can bring them again. But I agree that regardless of where that final breakdown is, if we don't get direction to go forward with a non-ad valorem assessment, it won't happen next year. And so we're at a decision point now if we're to get that process going. And just like with the solid waste, you can jump off the course anytime you want, but if we get direction to move forward at least, then we can prepare the resolution and be ready if that's the final decision.
Right, but is 1 month going to make any difference to moving this along further next year? Because this is, it's not going to commence until we have money in hand. And I understand that that's part of the process, is getting the money in hand, but I believe that part of this whole picture is knowing what the cost is going to be to the individual lot owners.
Well, I think that if you choose to go forward with a non-ad valorem assessment, we'll do a resolution in December, I guess, get that letter out in January to the tax collector's office, and go on that path. And then we'll get into the budget cycle. We'll have this set up for the fall. We'll have impact fee funds sufficient to allow us to build the project, and we'll have a path to recover that revenue over a period of time. So that could lead to this being budgeted for construction in FY 2022. Agreed that, if you don't do something like this, there's going to be at least 5 holdouts that are not going to do this. 5 residents, 5 lots that are not going to want to do this. There is really no other way to build this road in a fair way and spread the burden among all the lot owners without some sort of assessment. Because they're going to hold out, and it could be 20 years. I've been in my house for 20 years. And if the city liens the house 20 years later, maybe when they sell it or they give it to their heirs or what, I don't know the law on that, but that's when we would actually get our money. That's a long time to wait for recovery.
So it sounds like what you're asking us is to approve a non-ad valorem assessment in order to collect the cost for the city on this project. It doesn't seem like you're asking us to choose between one or the other. It sounds like.
That would be my recommendation of the 2 choices, but ultimately, I heard what Commissioner Samora said, and he's got some good points. It's really up to the commission which path that you want to go. They both have pros and cons, but my preference would be, the advantage of the non-ad valorem is we send this to the tax collector, and then we don't have to deal with the collection on it either. We have it guaranteed, it's going to be paid. It could be longer than 5 years potentially if you really want to reduce the annual financial burden. That's up to the commission, but you would guarantee that money comes back into the city over whatever period of time you
Right,
think
but
is
once again, the
appropriate.
missing piece is what kind of money are we talking about?
Well, at one time we were talking about, it's bounced around a bit. And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to try from memory. I think we were in the
Approximately.
$300,000 range for the project overall. And there was differences between the north and south alignments, and the straight through was definitely the cheapest. And I'm sorry I don't have that committed to memory here today, but the burden on the 16 properties was, again, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 16 to 20,000 in that range, yeah.
That's what I remember too.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have 16 properties, 9 have approved moving forward, 3 lots will be into conservative, so we're looking at 9, and then out of 16, we've got 13 left, so 9 divided by 13 is a 69% request to move forward. So really, all we need to concentrate on tonight is, and we've got an estimate from last meeting of what it might cost each owner. So if we could focus on special assessment versus the non-ad valorem, because I'm still confused about those two.
And if I can just speak a little bit further, with the solid waste, the constraints that we are on with letting the tax collector know, we have to give him acknowledgement by the end of this current year, calendar year. And we have to advertise it, I believe, 4 weeks in advance of the next meeting. So we are at drop dead deadline that we are going to discuss this. Just like solid waste, we then had the alternative after we got past those deadlines to discuss how much, timing-wise, how far out we could spread the cost, setting the fees, or we could have just decided that we weren't going to move forward with it. Unfortunately, it's just a deadline that we have to commit to giving the tax collector notice that we potentially would be looking at a non-ad valorem in the next year to assess fees for the development of a roadway, and then we can discuss further whether it's an assessment or a non-ad valorem. It's just a state deadline that we have to have that resolution set and make the motions to move forward with it, and we always have the opportunity to rescind that later.
So if I'm hearing you right, we could just go ahead and say, yes, we're going to do a special assessment or a non-ad valorem, and then we can change it and do a special assessment instead if we choose to do so.
Correct. We are okay with moving forward with enacting a non-ad valorem in the next year for the development of Second Street. And that you're on board at reviewing that, going further into FY21, and then making that decision and getting it to the tax collector in a timely basis, which I believe was the end of July, so that he would have it on the assessments and the tax roll. So you have some time. It's just the limited time that we have to alert Dennis Hollingsworth's office that we're looking at potentially doing this.
And in calculating the amount, are we legally allowed to include an interest rate to recoup interest on the actual hard cost share for the lot, given that we're putting the money out?
And that would be something further that we would have to develop on how interest could be charged, if it's even feasible, whether or not we would like to offer it as an option for those residents before you decide to enact the non-ad valorem. If we say, okay, your bill is $16,000, if you'd like to pay for it up front, then we could take those funds. Otherwise, those that choose not to,
right,
perhaps we only assess the non-ad valorem to those people who are holding out. And we, do want to move forward with developing the road. But those are all discussions that,
If it's a
you can
real
have
estate
after.
tax, we can offer a discount for early payment. If it's an ad valorem real estate tax, we can offer a discount for early payment, just like any, like if you pay in November versus December or January.
Why would you want to give a discount for?
To get the money up front.
And so, again, the only thing that I believe Max is putting forward today is to move forward with the potential to assess a non-ad valorem after the first of the year, having further discussions to set fees and methodology on how we're going to move forward. If we do an assessment, cash up front, and then you're off the list of, you owe for this particular project. or if you, you financially can't afford to write a check for $16,000 and the commission is willing to, extend the non-ad valorem for a 3-5-year period, however many years you would like to put that out there, and we would recover our money. And again, we could certainly look into the potential of charging interest on that.
Thank you so much for that explanation. It makes a lot of sense. Have we noticed this 69% who are willing to pay to ask them their preference of an assessment or a non-ad valorem?
No.
And I want to speak to that percent again, and we don't have all that hard data in front of us, but as I recall, and from what the mayor said earlier about the 3 lots going into conservation, at least the last conversation I had with the owner of that lot was that, or those lots, was that they are opposed to the development. So they want to be logged in on that ratio as being opposed to it. They're only considering, the donation if we force it on that lower ratio. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to point that out again.
All right, if the commissioners don't have any more questions right at the minute, let's have public comment.
Yes, ma'am. Mark Craddock.
Thanks. Mark Craddock, 116 2nd Street. So just a couple things. It seems like we're forcing this issue because there's this deadline at the end of the year, but if you're talking about extending the payments over time anyway, is there really an urgency to get this done this year? Maybe it goes to the next year. The other thing the mayor said was that this was voted on. I looked back at the record. I don't think that there was a vote. I think that there was some consensus of wanting to move forward and directing staff to investigate and develop costs, but I don't believe it was voted on. So I just wanted to make that part of the record. The other thing is, I honestly don't know if a special assessment or a non-ad valorem, I don't know enough about it to know which penalizes the owners of the lots that don't want to develop, but I think that should be taken into consideration and a little bit more time given to exploring what the benefits, pros and cons are for not just the city, but also for the owners and the residents. And then I did want to note that I didn't see it, and I think Max and everybody have done a great job on this, and we're excited that Max met with the North Florida Land Trust and that's moving forward. We do appreciate that. I just wanted to note, I did not see anything in the current agenda item that spoke to the commitment of the city to making the improvements to the existing 2nd Street if it did go through, repaving and widening the road. I just want to make sure that that commitment is still part of the city's intention. And then also there are some trees in the right-of-way as the road gets built. We just want to make sure that's protected. I know that was discussed in earlier meetings. It's not part of today's agenda item, so it may be out of the scope of the agenda item, but I wanted to bring that up again. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Regine de Toledo.
Thank you. 309 St. George Street, St. Augustine. I wanted to mention, just as a follow-up and an addition, which we had shared this information with Mr. Royal because we didn't get a chance to talk to him about it yet, and that is that in addition to the North Florida Land Trust, we've talked with just today, the Alachua Conservation Trust. They cover 16 counties, including St. Johns County. They already service and hold conservation easement for property in Summer Haven. They were very interested in this property, so it doesn't dead end at those 2 options that Mr. Royal mentioned, which was North Florida Land Trust or Parkland? The park commitment that you would make. So the third option, or we move that into Plan B, is the Alachua Conservation Trust. So they are interested in pocket parks even more than a North Florida Land Trust. And they were very interested. We already have a video conference meeting set up with Mr. Craddock and I, set up with them for Wednesday, so we're going to present our plan to them. So we do have that as a real option. So I just wanted to let you know that we're committed to moving in that direction of conservation. It isn't predicated totally on, being forced to pay for the assessment. We're committed to conservation, and these 3 lots seem like they would be great for the city of St. Augustine Beach to have. And I did want to mention one thing, since you've been talking about the cost. It should be brought up that in addition to the road and the paving of the road, there's I know it's not your purview, but it's the St. Johns County utility costs. And somebody who does construction better than I do know that you have to put the utilities in first, but even before you start paving the road. So that's going to be a cost that would have to be levied to all of the existing lot owners, hopefully excluding ours that are going to be donated. So just take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. James Whitehouse? Sorry.
For the record, James Whitehouse, St. John's Law Group, 104 Seagrove Main Street here in St. Augustine Beach, Florida. I'm here on behalf of 9 of the lot owners along this section of 2nd Street, as you know from before. I think one of the things that I'd just like to add to the discussion is that I think we did, and I was looking at the minutes that are in your packet too, and we did have a discussion about the opening. I think there was a consensus to go straight through, to choose that option. And at the end, it says that the city staff will work on the plan for financials, and I think that's why we're back here today. I think one of the clarifications might be on when you talk about the non-ad valorem assessment or the special assessment, it's not really about whether we're going to do this. My understanding is we're still moving forward with doing this, and really, we have the road impact fees to do so, so nobody's going to be out any money. It's going to be bringing the money back in, and what are our collection purposes? So you're really deciding how are we going to collect for it? Not whether we're going to do it, not when we're going to do it, because basically both plans, whether you do the non-ad valorem and special assessment, we're collecting after we're already going forward with the assessment. We have $655,000 in the road impact fee fund, and we're about to get some more from Embassy Suites. So again, it's going to be paid back. The people are willing to pay for it. In fact, the majority of them, I think, of the 9 are probably going to move forward with the development as soon as we start getting the road in. The city's going to start getting, taxes, real estate taxes that are much increased on those properties as soon as they're developed. So I think there's an incentive to move forward as quick as possible for the development of the road. We can always figure out how to do it. I think both ways, you're going to have maybe 3 or 5 years. Both ways, it's going to be the same amount that you're collecting. So it's really who does the collecting is what we're deciding. And so I don't necessarily know it has to be too big of a hubbub of figuring that out. I think either way is probably fine. My people don't mind either way, as long as we continue to move forward, use the road impact fees. Let's get the staff working with the contractor to move forward on development of the road, and then we can decide on the other things. But I appreciate the time. Thank you, ma'am.
I have no more cards on this item.
Commissioners, further discussion on this item? And I think our question tonight is, what about the financials? How do we collect the money back?
I think at this point, Madam Mayor, I think we'd be smart just to go ahead and do a non-ad valorem, because we can always rescind it and cancel it, but if we prolong it, then it's not going to move forward in some direction. So that's just my take on it. I think we can still figure out, after listening to everything, the mechanism on how to collect it. But I think if we have a time certain, at least we can lock that in now and then move forward with a direction of how we are going to collect it.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, I think that the sentiment that Vice Mayor was raising earlier about, if it's going to be $16,000 and you're going to have, 3 years of, $5,500 or plus, new tax bill, whatever format, it sounds staggering for those people that aren't interested in developing. I don't know, I think that the majority had already said that they want to proceed, so I'll defer to you guys.
Commissioner George, do you have any thoughts on the non-ad valorem versus the special assessment?
Yeah, I think that we have so much of an infrastructure demand in our city right now that our impact fees are precious. quite frankly. I think that, if we're going to be the developer for this small group of private owners, then we need to make sure we get that money back very quickly. And that's a harsh reality for those that, aren't interested in developing. But we need that money for other projects. That's parking lots, that's sidewalks, it's all kinds of things. So, I think that the special assessment is a better idea, but still, I think it's staggering to give expectation of collecting in a shorter time frame than 3 years. So that means we're waiting to do those other infrastructures, needs in the city. So I would be hesitant to consider the special assessment also because of the enforcement cost. I'd much rather, utilize the mechanism for collection that's already there. It's free to the city, that the non-ad valorem provides. We don't need the extra attorney's fees of filing foreclosure suits and then having that policy discussion down the road. Well, this is so-and-so's homestead, and yes, we have the legal authority to foreclose, but do we really want to do that? That's just, I like the flexibility that it offers, but given that this particular street has always been a mixed bag of people, really staunchly holding out, I just don't think it's appropriate for this application, so.
So to summarize,
I would stand behind Mr. Treddick's and, Beverly's, Beverly. So let's defer to our staff experts here, right?
Okay.
And
non-ad
they're
valorem
recommending
assessment.
non-ad valorem assessment. Everything I know from, real estate law and tax law, I echo their recommendations.
okay. Vice Mayor?
I would also lean towards non-ad valorem as opposed to special assessment for the reasons that were just discussed. But I would also be cautious of, when to start the project and to have the majority of the money in hand before we start putting money out. Because just as Commissioner George stated, we have other infrastructure projects that we need to devote funds to as well. So it would be prudent to have the money in hand before we started spending the money. But I would favor a non-ad valorem assessment as opposed to a special assessment.
Commissioner Samora?
Yeah, so we've had a pretty robust discussion about it, but I don't recall hearing, and maybe I missed it, and I just want to throw it out there. If we go the route of a non-ad valorem, is there any way to collect that money prior to development? Because I just heard Mr. Whitehouse say he represented 9 owners that would probably start development right away, which indicates to me that they'd be willing to pay upfront a special assessment, whereas a non-ad valorem, I believe once we do it, it's going to be 3 years, 5 years, whatever we decide at a later date, that we're bound by that structure, and we have to be uniform with it. So I just am very, very hesitant with the non-ad valorem in that we lose a lot of this flexibility. So did I miss that? Have we discussed that? Is there any flexibility with a non-ad valorem to where we can collect it up front prior to permits being issued, anything like that?
That's a good question.
Patty said you were going to look into that further to see if we can take the two-prong approach and provide those options.
Yes, to see if we could do a special assessment ahead of actually assessing the non-ad valorem. And I think those discussions are had after we nail it down that, yes, we're going to continue to investigate after the first of the year and look at those options. And I do know that within the tax collector's office, if I have to make an adjustment, there's a period of time, and I believe it's 3 years, that I can go back and, add or take off a non-ad valorem and make an adjustment by simply filling out a form and sending it to them. So that may be viable where we say, we've billed for 1 year, now they've developed it, they're going to sell it, but before we sell it, we want all of our money up front, and then we just submit the change form to remove that from the tax collector bill. But those are things that I can work with Lex on and just make sure that we're legally going to be covered with all of that.
I'm clearly about keeping all options open, so if we have to move forward to be able to still execute a non-ad valorem, I'm willing to do that, but I'm still not fully on board with going that route.
So, Patty, as our financial director, you need to come back to us. The commissioners are indicating that you need to come back to us with some more, the estimates again, some of the options. I think most of the commissioners said they're willing to discuss the non-ad valorem, but I think you're going to have to come back with more detail and a lot of the comparison charts on ad valorem, all the flexibilities, all the benefits, special assessment, what are the flexibilities, are the benefits, so that the commissioners can make a final decision on this next month.
Yes, ma'am. Again, it's simply a matter of we have to make the choice if we're going to move forward with the non-ad valorem potentially in the coming year, to have that option, which requires us to advertise, have the meeting, and then notice the tax collector ahead of the 12/31 deadline. So we will definitely be working on nailing everything down, giving the options, and having the costs.
What I'm thinking of, a very visual charts that is very, very clear for the
Yes, ma'am.
commissioners. This was very hard on special assessment versus non-ad valorem. So,
And again, I was on the fence, and in my discussions with Max, my only consideration is if you lien a property, we could have that out there for years. I want to see that money coming back in, and I understand if they develop it, we're going to get more taxes, we're going to get impact fees, et cetera. But that's a cash outlay of our impact fees that we could be using for other functions.
okay. And so that chart would have as one of the criteria is the how to promote getting the money up front, how long, what would, and I'll work with you on that chart, but I do believe the commissioners are asking for a more visual presentation on this.
Yes, ma'am.
And have I said this correctly for everybody? Okay.
Well done, Mayor.
All right. Okay, so we're not going to, I'm not going to ask for a motion or approval of Resolution 2021 tonight. We're going to come back.
We have to. We have to because it's going to require us to do the 4 weeks of advertising and then a second reading in December so that we can notice the tax collector by 12/31 that we're going to move forward with it in January. Again, this is just the prep work so that we can actually do the hard work after the first of the year. And if we move forward with it, we do. If we don't, then we can just say we've decided not to, and we just alert them that we're not going to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Since it's a resolution, we don't need to read the whole thing up front. Is that correct? Mr. Taylor? Correct.
I don't believe the resolution.
That is not our call. Yes, way too small.
So to move this along, I will ask for a motion and a second on resolution number 2021.
I'll make a motion for Resolution 2021 to level a non-ad valorem assessment, so we can get that on the clock.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Beverly.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, was that, do we need a motion to approve the resolution, or was it a motion?
It's a,
Resolution 2021 to add a non-ad valorem assessment.
Okay, I didn't hear the first part of it. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, Commissioner.
yes, ma'am, a roll call on this one, please.
Yes, Commissioner Samore?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumble?
Yes.
Mayor England?
Yes?
Commissioner George?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Costa?
Yes. All right, Thank you, Commissioners. Here, then now, item number 8 is our resolution 2022 to extend outside seating for our restaurants. If there's no questions from the Commissioners on this, I'll ask for public comment. Questions?
I have no speaker cards.
All right.
I think it's a great idea.
This is resolution number 2022. Any motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, since this is fairly clear, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. Motion, the resolution passes. Item number 9, the electronic vehicle charging station has been deleted. Max, that's true? Or is that, we got information on that?
We're asking that it be postponed, but I do have a little information
Oh,
I'd like
good,
to share.
good. We
So,
got to keep the heat on this one.
I've had conversations with the installers. We held them off until after the election for very obvious reasons, that the parking lot was packed with voters. Hope and pray we're going to have this in the next few weeks. We don't have the contract in place yet, so that will that's to allow us to get reimbursed, but the installation can go forward. So what we want to bring to you is a contract to get the reimbursement for the electric costs, plus a decision whether or not you want to recover some administrative costs that go with that. You know, we have to handle the various, it's not going to be a lot, but just you can have a slight increase in the fee to the vehicles. So what the plan is, at least unless I hear otherwise, is they'll get this thing installed. It will have a coming soon sign on it. And when we get that contract in place, that agreement in place, we'll activate it, have a ribbon cutting, whatever we want to do, put it in, advertise it, get a lot of attention to the fact that we have a charging station. Of course, the other option would be to give away some free power for a couple weeks, but I don't know that there's an appetite for that. So,
Or a free Tesla.
so that's the game plan, to have a coming soon on it. We'll get the contract in place. I was hoping to have the contract for you tonight, but it just did not come back from Nova Charge fast enough. It's still at their attorneys for review. So as soon as we get it in, we'll get it to you. And then we'll schedule a little.
So you really don't need anything from us
Nope, just
tonight?
giving you information tonight.
That is-
And we'll reschedule it for December.
All right, perfect. Can't wait to get that. Okay, new business. Item number 10, Mr. Law.
All right, this is several code changes, just part of the ongoing work to clean up the land development regulations. The first one, the occupancy permits. As I understand it, not one of those has been issued since the mid-90s. I think it's a relic of an older time period. I don't even know if we have the legal authority to say you can't rent a house for 2 years. This has no bearing on your transient rental program. That's protected under Chapter 3. So my recommendation is just remove it and just reserve the section for future use. And as we went through our records destruction, I can attest, I did find these files, and they were the mid-90s was the last time one was issued.
So for new construction, you still need a CO? But
Oh,
for-
definitely. The
Okay.
state protocols take
Okay.
precedence over the
But
city.
this is just with regard to,
At some point in the 90s and prior to that, the city was issuing essentially a rental permit. So if you didn't actually own the house, you had to pay the city $25, so we know that's old. Then there was an inspection, but
okay,
no, I see no purpose of this anymore. And like I said, your transient rental program is secure.
okay.
Do we want to just do each one individually and address any
No,
comments?
go
Okay.
through all of them, and we'll see which ones we want to
The
talk about.
next one on page 4, as you know, we have a medium low density district. It was never listed in the table of impervious surface ratios. The only difference between medium, low, and medium is you can't have multifamilies in the medium low. So we put it in there 50% to match medium density. And if we recall, a couple months ago, we defined the mixed-use district, which is the commercial sector. Your comprehensive plan specifically mentions that the mixed-use district will allow 70%. So it's just putting them in the tables. Page 6 talks about unsafe buildings. So when I got here, we moved fast with the land development code, and we knew we were adopting the building code at the time. So now instead of having the year, we just go to the currently adopted building code. At that point, every time there's a cycle change every 3 years, you'll be seeing a chapter 1 of the building code, which you'll see next month, which gives me multiple spots to address the property maintenance code. All right, the next section is something that came up. As we have over 5,000 residents, Florida's statute says we must have 7 code enforcement board members. Well, we do, so that's great. Unfortunately, one section of the code said we have 5. So it was, once again, a remnant from a long time ago. So this is an attempt to fix this. And also it removes the time frame of the meetings. So I basically took the exact same language from the Planning and Zoning Board, and I just modified it. The regular meetings of the board shall be held on the 4th Wednesday of each month, unless otherwise ordered by the board.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Law regarding these 4 recommendations? Mr. Law, I have one question with regard to what kind of improvements are allowed in a medium-low?
Medium-low, prior to when we brought the draft code online, chapter by chapter, there was a paragraph, and with my memory, I could probably tell you it was on the right page of my book on the left column, about 2/3 of the way down. And it basically said medium-low density shall be regulated the same as medium densities, with the exception of multifamily residences. So basically, if you can build it in medium, other than multifamily, you could build it in medium-low there. They just, when you created the districts, they didn't want multifamilies in there.
So in medium-low, there's no multifamily?
Right, and that's picked up when we adopted where the allowable uses are in your land development code. It's actually picked up in there in those big tables.
So no duplexes?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay. So is it single-family only?
Well, you would be prohibited on a duplex on a 50 by 93 lot anyways, just because of the square footage sizes. All right, so we see on the second column, ML, medium, low, single families permitted, mobile homes are obviously not permitted, and multifamily and condominiums. Now keep in mind, you did mention duplexes. Technically a duplex is, potentially could be single family, depending on how it's set up. So if we think of all the older duplexes, that division line is actually a lot line. In today's world, they're called zero lot lines. You're probably not going to see that anymore, as the current trend is to buy those buildings, tear them apart, and build 2 houses on the separate lots.
What I'm trying to get my head wrapped around is what's the difference between low density and medium low? If medium low, I know it allows single family. Does it allow 1 to 4 family? Because that's I guess you go duplex, 1 to 4 family, and then you go to multifamily. And why would we go to 50% on medium-low when it's primarily all single-family, just like low-density?
Because it's based on the lot size. Medium-low density was your medium-density sector. A section was carved out, and that became the medium-low, just prohibiting the multifamilies in that mechanism. They were always medium. So keep in mind, all your mediums, if you look on your zoning map, color over here, but in our world, it's green. Medium-low is now a light blue. They're still your 50 by 93 lots, so you can't call them low density because they wouldn't conform with the minimum lot sizes. So they were a medium density that just got an extra restriction to prohibit the multifamilies.
Okay.
So all this did is it removed the words and put it in a table format.
Okay, so it prohibits multifamily for sure, but
Definitely.
for medium-low, you could go 1 to 4 family. If the
Oh,
lot, no?
you wouldn't be able to do it. The
Wouldn't be able
lot
to do
sizes
it.
would Keep in mind, these are 50 by 93 lots, 4650.
I'm still trying to understand the reasoning for the, why different than low density?
Because medium low is not a low density. It's a medium density lot that they provided stronger restrictions on. So your low densities are all bigger than 50 by 93, right? Those are your larger lots, your 10,000 square foot, your 8,000. Well, your medium densities are your 4650. These medium lows are 4650. They just don't want multifamilies. They don't want anything like that anymore. So in this city, the multifamily dwelling unit, any residential structure containing 2 or more separate dwelling units.
Other commissioners' questions for Mr. Law on his 4 proposals?
I guess actually just going back to the rentals, so is this, this is eliminating the inspection procedure for the long-term rentals?
Right, the only thing we want to inspect, the only thing we are inspecting is the transient rental program.
Okay, so, and you don't think that there's a purpose to, I mean, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm wondering if there was a shift in terms of the state and kind of recommended
Not that I'm aware
practice,
of.
or?
I came across this a while ago, but it wasn't prudent because it wasn't being utilized as far as all the other code changes were going, because I can only go so fast. But I did ask Bonnie, and she's been here for 21 years. She says she's never issued the permit. And like I said, the oldest one I could find was the mid-90s, and that's kind of where all the record keeping stopped.
Gary Larson has come and inspected, I mean, way before you, you know, rentals that I've managed over the years.
Right, now, if it's a part of the section for transient rentals, they talk about if you are in the medium density and you're renting over a month to 6 months, that's still regulated.
No, I mean for year-long leases.
Right, we have no,
Did intermittently, I guess selectively,
Yeah.
those that they wanted to.
and I can't
Collect the
obviously
money
address
on.
that.
Yeah, okay.
We see no reason to regulate a year-long or a 2-year rental.
Sure.
It just gets into a whole lot of issues. Are we even allowed to do it? Are we allowed to tell people what to do with their property at that level? And I can tell you as a building official, I can't walk into your building and say, hey, the code's changed. Let's get up to speed. I can't do that. The building was built when it was built, and that's the codes it was built to. So transient rentals are different. And this year you will see something roll out with the standard inspections for transient rentals. This is what we're looking for in the interest of public safety.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to clarify, but sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Rumwell, any questions?
No questions, Madam Mayor, thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor, any questions? No, ma'am. Commissioner Samora? None here. Okay. Okay, so then if there's no further questions, does anyone have a concern, or would we just have to give you an okay tonight to move forward with drafting
Yes, ma'am,
ordinances?
I would ask that you direct the city attorney to draft the
Okay.
ordinance.
So I ask the commissioners to raise your hand if you have any objections to moving forward on any of these 4 items. Speak now. Okay, well then you have your consensus to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, mobile food sales. Mr. Royal,
Yes,
good catch on that statute.
this is coming to you because of a change in the state law that says we cannot or no longer prohibit food trucks within the entirety of the city's jurisdiction, and I'm quoting from a very tiny section of the 103-page law. Believe me, I did not read it all. I just came across a reference to this somewhere. And then the deputy city clerk did some research and pinned it down for me. At this point, food trucks or mobile food vending is not allowed in your city except in connection with special events. So my recommendation is to make us conforming with the new law, that you consider certain regulations that would allow vehicles in commercial land use districts, set time limits when they can operate, allow them to operate on public property only in connection with special events, prohibit them from operating on the beach and set a size limit, require they conform to the city's sign regulations, and that they have state licenses and meet local health department regulations. And any other regulations you think are needed. And I provided you with some regulations from the city of Cocoa Beach, pages 6 and 7 in your agenda books, so you can see what that city adopted. So it's pretty simple. We have to allow them in the city, and the issue before you is what provisions do you want to set on them that will enable them to be in our city legally?
Well, since we have to allow them, and the list of restrictions on page 6 and 7 are the most extensive, Commissioners, would you be comfortable in moving forward, asking our attorney to start drafting a regulation? If you have any particular thoughts on that regulation right now, I'd say put the items that are in pages 6 and 7 in that ordinance, and then we can discuss further once we have our ordinance in front of us. Max, is there a particular question you need to, we don't have enough public property for them to.
No.
Yeah, the parkettes would not be, there's just not enough public property.
No, and Mr. Law and I were talking about this earlier today, and he was going to suggest, and I agree, that it might be good to have the same regulations that St. Johns County has. So there's consistency between our jurisdiction and the county areas that are around us. So then it's easier for people who want to have such.
However, we're smaller.
Yes.
And we have less property and only one street, really. So we need to consider not only what St. Johns County has, but what we need in this city.
Yes.
And put it out there in a format that our businesses can review.
Yeah, I agree, Mayor. I think that starting from the county's version, is a good place to start. And when that comes in front of us, again, I would like these representative samples here that were provided to be included again in the agenda packet so that we can use it as a checklist, perhaps to add to what the county has.
Along with our own draft. Okay.
I believe, Madam Mayor, the city of St. Augustine also has an ordinance, and it would be more, I think, conducive to what we have.
Okay.
By the size of cities. But I also agree with Commissioner Undine, there's some language that's already written in this Venice, Florida one that sounds pretty good as well.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, can you do a scattergun approach, lay it all out, and pick out the best and bring us an ordinance and include all your examples in the package?
I have a couple of questions,
Okay.
actually. So in the order, it does say that we aren't allowed to require a special license, registration, or permit. However, would we be allowed to charge a franchise fee like we charge to commercial trash and that kind of thing?
Question.
You mean for trash pickup or?
Well,
I know
we
you
charge
mean-
a franchise fee to anybody who comes in our city to do business. So couldn't we charge a franchise fee to the mobile food vendors?
That would be a-
Also, there's I do like a lot of the language in the Venice directive. But I was confused where the beginning of the Venice order, it refers to Governor DeSantis and the COVID, but it doesn't have anything to do with that. Am I correct in that? In assuming that?
Well,
This new legislature does not have anything to do with COVID. It's not COVID-related, it's part of the ongoing, now this is,
Yes,
okay.
that's right.
Because it was confusing the way that Venice had theirs set up at the beginning. But I do like in the Venice order where it says the mobile food dispensing vehicle shall be set back from residential structures by at least 150 feet, because in the Daytona, is it the Daytona Beach one? It says only 10 feet from the property line, so I'm not sure that that's enough space from a residential structure, a house. And then they both say there may be no more than 2 mobile food dispensing vehicles on any parcel. I would strongly suggest that we consider 1. And then it says overnight parking shall be allowed. If it's a mobile food vendor, then why are we allowing overnight parking? So those are some specific concerns that I have in these ordinances. I'm not sure if anybody else had a chance to look them over, but I'm surprised that we didn't get a copy of what the county's is or what the city of St. Augustine is, because they have existing ordinances in place as well.
To parlay on Vice Mayor, I don't think we have regulation over the beaches either. I think that's St. Johns County, so I think the county would be in charge of that.
No, the beach is within our limits, so our regulations would govern.
But there's no vending on the beach, period.
Right.
That's the county. That's
And we
the county.
have adopted the county beach code as ours,
Okay.
but we had to adopt it. They couldn't impose it on us.
Okay.
So, Lex, does this new legislation open up the possibility of vending on the beach?
I wouldn't think so, but I'll double check it.
Yeah, when it comes back, I'd be curious to see. I know that's a cultural issue for the whole county. I think that would upset a lot of people. I'd just like to know how to speak to it when I'm asked on the street. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got some of the same concerns, and it's disappointing that it wasn't that long ago that we revisited our food truck ordinance. And, there was a lot of community input on it, and there was a lot of good discussion. So, First Vice Mayor, your observation on the Venice order, I don't think is incorrect. Number 2, the last thing in the ordinance says it expires upon expiration of the governor's executive order. So that is confusing to me. I don't know why their ordinance is wrapped around the governor's executive order. Maybe you can check into that?
Check into it. I have some theories.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think
Maybe,
it was,
yeah.
this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this was just included as some examples of restrictions
Right.
to consider
That's right.
regarding mobile food vending. But this city was just, adopting a looser standard due to COVID to allow it for the duration of the emergency, state of emergency.
Okay.
And
I
so
think-
just kind of an example of here's some things to think about.
That's a good point. And one of the things that sticks with me is you can't ban it in this municipality in its entirety, so another way to go about this is to say, we can have them here. You can have them in Pier Park, and that's it. Or, carve out an area where the food trucks are able to operate. Restrooms was a big one that came up, so have some consideration for that, where if you're serving food and drinks, that there needs to be a facility. Those are just a couple of thoughts.
So the Florida statute, which I don't know if that's got a sunset provision or not, but it says may not prohibit from operating within the entirety of the entity's jurisdiction. So we wouldn't be able to restrict the food trucks just to Pier Park, I don't think. They may be allowed on private property. If we say no public property, we may not be, but Mr. Taylor, if you'll look into that.
I'll look into it.
Okay.
That's kind of where I want to look for the beach question, and it's almost the exact same question. So I want to make sure that I read the whole statute and really think about it.
Okay. All right. Max, have we given
Yep.
you enough on
Yeah,
this
we got enough
question?
direction. Yeah, well, Lex has gotten enough direction.
Yeah, I got a good.
And the next thing is the use of the city meeting rooms.
I have a speaker card on
Oh, okay.
this item.
Okay.
Mr. Edslavin?
Thank you. Well, justice for Brendan Schneck. 2013 and 2014, your predecessors on this commission, in a, I think, an overt act of mean-spiritedness, decided to ban food trucks. Rather than permit them, like Brendan Schneck had asked, you decided to ban them, and that was anti-competitive and it violated the antitrust laws. And I wish the Schnecks had sued the city of St. Augustine Beach. Instead, they were very creative, and they got a really good realtor, the former chair of our PCB here, Karen Zander, and she worked out a deal to put a food truck park in the no man's land between the city of St. Augustine and the city of St. Augustine Beach, remember? And it was really wrong, and there's two owners here of brick and mortar businesses, restaurants, and I know at least one of y'all spoke at that time, and you were wrong. My parents had a mobile food truck at Franklin Field after World War II. My father was a decorated combat veteran with 3 Bronze Stars with the 82nd Airborne. And the Philadelphia police, in the same kind of anti-competitive action that we saw here in St. Augustine Beach, extorted 10% every Sunday during the football games. They never made a dime. We need to encourage free enterprise, and that means truly free enterprise, including permitting food trucks. And any libertarian foundation with a law department would have taken the Schneck's case and sued y'all. Instead, they were creative and they decided not to wait 5 or 10 or 15 years for an antitrust lawsuit to go through the courts. And you can go there now, and it's a beautiful place, that food truck park between the two cities. But here we right a wrong. And I actually have to admit, our dull Republicans in the state legislature, they actually got it right this time because they did identify it wrong. A lot of times when they've done preemption, they were totally out of, just illegal and unseemly. But this is a righteous law. You need to comply with it immediately. If somebody wants to have a food truck tomorrow, you can't be doing any enforcement actions, and you need to so instruct the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin.
Mr. Taylor, one other thing that I just wanted to make mention of is it says that they all have to have the proper accreditation for licenses, registrations, and permits, and health department things. If we're allowing them in the city, then I think that it would be prudent for us to have them submit a copy to the city so that we have that on file for them. Thank you.
No, I'll include that.
Okay, are we ready to go on to item 12? Okay, this is use of city meeting rooms.
Yes, I should preface this by saying that the meeting rooms have been closed and not available to the public for reasons that you understand, I think, because of the pandemic. We have 2 public meeting facilities beside this room, and this room is restricted only to government use. And that's this room across the hall, the corridor rather, and then Building C in the parking lot, which was a former post office. We've had a fairly liberal set of regulations about the rooms and really reasonable prices. $75 for up to 4 hours, $150 for use over 4 hours. But those fees have not been paid by nonprofits, civic groups, the Alcoholics Anonymous chapters that have used to meet here every night of the week, except Fridays and Saturdays. Homeowners associations, we allowed them to meet here with no cost because they are based in our city. They're our city residents, and they pay for the city hall out of their taxes. However, the staff has talked to me on a number of occasions that it might be appropriate, given the heavy demand the rooms have had over the years, the cost to the city to have those rooms available, that we consider, number one, limiting the number of people who can use them once the pandemic moderates, and that we charge not only outside groups, but groups that are based in our city, like homeowners associations and condominium groups, etc. So I've outlined some basic recommendation for changes You may have others or better ones. I've attached the county regulations for the use of their meeting rooms and libraries as a contrast to ours. And then a list of meeting room policies from other Florida cities.
Well,
Seeking your guidance as to where we go from here.
okay, definitely regulations during this state of emergency that, and I think opening up is probably okay, as long as we put together the social distancing and the mask and the safety precautions. And then because of the cost for the sanitation and cleaning up, the fee is reasonable during an emergency order or a temporary order while there's a state of emergency. And I'll open it up for the other commissioners to talk about this. Commissioner Rumwell, your thoughts?
I think you're right. I think, if people need to start meeting, would like to start meeting, I think that we could do that safely. I think we should have a cleaning fee at some point on top of everything. That's just a carte blanche, this is what you're going to pay. And so those are just my comments for sake of timing tonight.
Okay, Commissioner?
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're right, Mayor, about, during this COVID state of emergency and all these concerns, there should be these additional policies. We need to, we're going to have our maintenance has to do a certain degree of sanitation. I mean, that's our responsibility. We've got to do that. So there should be additional charge for that. But anyone who needs a space to meet, I know, it's difficult to find a good space to meet, especially for some of these smaller organizations. So open it up with smart standards and smart regulations.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think this is a good proposal. I would agree that in addition to the $100 for the 4 hours, that there is during this COVID thing, until we get it past it, an additional cleaning and sanitation charge.
So let me understand, is that all three of you are saying go to the $100 for everybody plus a cleaning fee?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I hear you saying,
Yeah,
Commissioner
because
Samora.
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
It just seems a little bit punitive to the groups, the nonprofits that meet on a regular basis. I don't know, charging $100. How often do they meet, Max, some of them?
Every day.
Well, the AA groups, as I said, they were different chapters, and they were, well, one group in particular, they met Tuesday at noontime. I think that was one of the most popular one, not popular, that was the one most well-attended, because I think that's where the court mandated
Correct.
people had to attend, those who were caught with DUI offenses. But then we had ones that met every night, different chapters. The homeowners, they might meet once a year, some of them. They might have their, condo meeting if they don't have a proper meeting place. Island Hammock met more often. They might meet every quarter.
Some meet once a month.
Yeah, they do. Some meet once a month, some meet every quarter, and some meet annually. But there's a very high demand. We turn people away. And sometimes they use the kitchen, and there's no charge for that. And I think there should be, if you're going to use the kitchen, because we have to do extra cleaning with the refrigerator and the rest of it, so.
Well, it's clear we have to cover our costs.
Sure. I just think about the groups, the nonprofits. I guess let me just focus on that, the nonprofits that meet on a weekly basis, and you're talking about $50, $200 a year.
Yeah, if they're meeting repeatedly, I don't have a problem with economy of scale charging. I mean, there's less administrative cost for each booking when you come in and say, I need it every Monday. I mean, but so I think $100 for individual occasions makes sense, but if there is a group that's meeting once a week, I don't have a problem with a different pay structure. I'd be curious to know what staff's, recommendations for those circumstances would be based upon what the actual use is, how many of those groups we have that repeat.
Well, the cleaning costs are static.
Yes,
We have to
correct.
cover that.
Right.
And,
But the room cost could fluctuate.
right.
Well, particularly Alcoholics Anonymous, they provide a very valuable service
Yes.
to the community, even though many of their members may not be residents of our city. They're still part of our area. And the guidance and the foundation they provide for those folks helps us in that we drive on the streets and we have people who are reforming themselves in terms of their drinking habits, thanks to the AA group. I am concerned, distancing requirements. I'm going to meet with the Public Works Director, and we'll map out, given the size of the rooms, how many people can fit in them. Some of these AA groups are really large. It might be 50 people. And I don't think you can maintain social distancing in that small meeting room, and certainly not in the former post office, for 50 people.
But isn't that what the mask is for?
Well, but if we're going to mandate distancing and masks,
Well, what is the CDC guideline on that?
both 6 feet distance and wear a mask. And that brings up the second thing. Who enforces the mask regulation? Particularly if they meet at night. We don't have anybody here at night. And the police department is busy doing its law enforcement activities, and they shouldn't have to come in and force that.
Well, I think the best we can do is open up the room, put out the rules like they're supposed to be by the CDC,
Okay.
charge the fee to cover our cost for cleaning, and then and maybe you carve out AA with regard to a fee, but everybody else pays a reasonable
Yeah.
rental fee. And we can make this that it is during the state of emergency and with a sunset provision, so that we come back and evaluate it again when it opens up.
May I also say something real quickly? One of the other considerations too that staff has talked about is the need for more staff space. And the conference room that we have currently is tight when we have meetings, so we cannot socially distance. So we've been utilizing, the commission room. We have 2 IT gentlemen who are in very tight quarters upstairs, probably not 6 feet apart. As we grow as a city, we certainly could use that space as well. And while it's not going to amount to a lot of revenue, I understand the need for the revenue at this time, but space is becoming a premium as we expand, as we go further into our workshops coming up in calendar year 21, looking at staffing issues, adding potentially a planner, and making sure that we are socially distancing or making that available to our employees as well. Perhaps we need to, consider that, in addition to renting the space out so that the staff could distance and be a little bit more, COVID-friendly.
Are you suggesting retrofitting the space to be offices? Or a
one of
large
the-
conference room, and then
Yes.
eliminating the meeting room?
So one of the considerations would be moving the conference room table out of the small office where we currently have it. Dividing the space that we currently have for our meeting room here, it already has a divider which will cut it into 2. And we could certainly make a more permanent wall situation in there, which would give us 2 additional spaces to expand for staff as we need it. And we could utilize half of that, or even open it up for the use of a meeting room. And then Building C could also be utilized. Or we can leave that as the only rental opportunity for meetings, for this, within the city. It's just a thought. As we grow and we need more room, we tend to put more people together. And, I think as COVID has taught us, we need to have a little bit more distance and be respectful, wearing masks and things. So it's just another consideration to throw out there.
We use that room also for public meetings, our public meetings.
Yes.
We very regularly have spillover, especially during, COVID, that's going to be a concern. I hear what you're saying. It's the first time I've heard any staff indicate that we might be getting tight on space. I think that that's probably a whole different task to research. I don't know if there's space upstairs, if there's other expansion areas, within or without of the footprint. So if that's something we need to tackle, then maybe we need to just put that on a new to-do list. That's a good point, and we can balance, the cost benefit of retrofitting that versus other options. But I guess for right now, for the next 10 months, 12-month perspective, I think that the proposals that Max brought forward are good ones.
Beverly, do we need to extend?
Yes, we do.
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting, and Mr. Seymour,
I'll
if you'll
second that,
second.
yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, we've got our guidance, we'll bring back what we developed to you for a blessing
Okay,
and whatever changes you think are needed.
okay. All right, we are down to staff comments. Mr. Royal, since you're standing right there, let's,
So aggrieved that we're going to finish in time. It's terrible. Surely we want to come back tomorrow, or Commissioner Zamora can. Only to remind our commissioners and the people at home that this Wednesday is a holiday, Veterans Day. We will be closed here. So if you call the office, no one will be here, and there will be no pickup of yard trash on Wednesday. That's all I have for the moment.
anyone have any questions for Mr. Royal?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Mr. Taylor, any updates for us on anything?
No updates. We're good and ready, and I'm healthy again, which is good.
Glad to hear that. Mr. Law,
I have nothing else.
Mr. Tredick,
I have nothing.
all right. Our Finance Director, Patty,
Ma'am.
all right. Beverly?
No.
Okay. And Chief Carswell?
Nothing else, thank you.
Okay. Have I covered everything? Got everything done?
Yeah.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Being none, we are adjourned. Glad to see everyone.
Likewise, glad to be here.